Hello everybody, this is George with Melnick's Automotive. In this video I'll show you how to replace wheel bearing hub on the 2011 through 2017 Honda Odyssey. Doesn't matter if it's a Touring, EXL, EX or LX, the procedure is identically the same. I have a humming wheel bearing and I believe I already have a video how to diagnose which bearing making the noise. But for this job, this is what I will be using. You don't have to use impact tools. You could do it manually. It just takes a little bit longer, but I'll be using these tools right here. This is a like a air chisel, same as really as a normal chisel. I'm going to be using impact. I'll be using size 36 socket. This is for axle nut. I'm going to be using size 22 to remove the lug nuts. I'll be using size 17 to remove 4 bolts from the bearing, and size 19 to remove the brake caliper. I will need a pointer to unlock the locking nut that's on the axle. You need a flat tip screwdriver, hammer. I have a pry bar like this. It doesn't have to be anything close to that, and I have a flat tip large screwdriver. Also, when you replace a wheel bearing, it's very important to replace it with original Honda wheel bearing. Don't use aftermarket, as you might be doing this job twice. The reason why, I did a video before on a Subaru, and I did this before. I tried to install a cheaper wheel bearing and I had a problem with ABS light coming back on. The reason why, this wheel bearing, it's in the bag, but as you can see, it's got magnetic strip that goes around the bearing, okay? And what happens in aftermarket wheel bearings, this magnetic strip sometimes isn't magnetic at all. They just put it in, but I'm not sure for what reason it lost its magneticity, and ABS sensor cannot pick up this ring right here, so it doesn't know how fast you're going, and it will throw an ABS traction control light on your dash. So let's get started. First, I'm going to remove the wheel, and that's going to be size 22. I'll try to do this step by step. Size 22. You could do it manually. You don't have to use an impact, but I'll be using impact because I have that available to me. It makes the job a lot quicker. So now I'm going to take the wheel off. Very easy if you have impact. If you don't, it's not a big deal. Alright, next I'm going to remove my brake caliper, and there's two size 19 bolts that hold it in place. One on the bottom right here, and there's one on top right here. I'm going to take it out in a second, and also it's a good idea to use a bungee cord to hang up the brake caliper, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. Okay, so my brake caliper is loose. It's ready to come out. It's always a good idea to use a bungee cord to prop it up on your strut so you don't put a lot of stress on this brake hose. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. I'm going to put my bungee cord on the strut like that, through the strut, just like this. If it's too long, you could wrap it around the spring a few more times. I'm gonna do that and continue. Here's what I did. I just wrapped it a couple times over the spring like this. Both my hooks are here, my brake caliper over here. Next, I'm going to take my brake caliper and just hang it on those hooks. When two bolts are out, it's very easy to pick it up, and you could use one of these holes to hang it up, just like this. As you can see, my brake hose is very loose. See, there's no stress on it at all, and it just hangs on the bungee cord like this. I found it very helpful. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take off my rotor. In order to remove the rotor, I got to straighten out the wheel first. There's a Phillips head screw to hold the brake rotor in place, so we need to remove that first. And I forgot to mention, you're also going to need a Phillips size screwdriver. In order to remove this Phillips head screw, you'll need a Phillips size screwdriver, and this one that I have is number 3 Phillips. It has to be something like this. Don't use a really sharp one because you're gonna screw up the edges. And this vehicle is a southern vehicle, so there's not much rust, but these get really stuck in there and you'll have a hard time taking the screw out. So what I normally do, there's the screwdrivers that you can pound on. Normally what I do, this is not the correct screwdriver to do that, but I have myself another tip that I made, and they make screwdrivers where you could hit on this other side. So what I normally do, I just put it in, I take my hammer, I hit it 2 or 3 times, and that breaks the thread lock, because these have thread lock. So now I could take it out using my screwdriver. And this is Phillips size 3, just so you know, Phillips size 3. Take it out. Once we did that, the rotor will come out very easily. And sometimes you have to pound on the rotor, depends where you live. Sometimes there's so much rust buildup on the back of the rotor, and you can see this one's in nice shape, it's nice and clean, but there's so much rust buildup that it takes a while to break it off. But what's nice, Honda gives you, you see this hole here and this hole here, you could take a screw this size and you can actually force it off right here. For example, if this doesn't want to come out, okay, if this doesn't want to come out, you took out your Phillips head, you have 2 takeoffs right here. You just put a screw in here and screw in here, and that will force the rotor off. That's just a tip. Next, what I need to do, I need to go ahead and unlock my axle nut, and that is the reason I'm going to use this pointer right here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and, as you can see, it's been locked in place by Honda. So we need to unlock it first and then take it out. So that is the reason why I have this pointer. You can see I just unlocked it. I'm going to bring my camera a little closer. See, maybe I could zoom in. As you can see, I went ahead and unlocked the lock nut on the axle. And I'm going to use size 36 to remove that axle nut. Very easy if you have impact, but nowadays they have these electronic impact tools, electric impact tools. Makes it very easy and quickly to remove stuff like this, and they're just as powerful as air tools. So next I'm going to take out the axle nut. You could do it manually, just more labor involved. Once I did that, there's 4 bolts in the back that I'm going to show you, which you're going to use size 17 to remove the bearing hub. And I'm going to go back to my brand new bearing hub to show you. This is brand new bearing hub, and it's being secured with 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, which are on the back. So this is what it looks like. So I'm going to take my camera on the back and I'm going to show you how to take those out. Normally what I do, if you can go back and turn the steering wheel. I like to turn the steering wheel right, take 2 bolts out, then turn the steering wheel left, take 2 bolts out. So in this case, I'm going to try to turn it with, because my steering wheel is unlocked, just using my bare hands. It takes a little bit more effort, but it's doable. Okay, I turned my steering wheel right, and I'm going to bring you right over. These are the bolts on the one side. These are size 17, top and bottom, and there's also behind the axle 2 more. So I'm going to take these 2 out. I'm going to turn my steering wheel left, and I'm going to remove 2 bolts from the back. So these are size 17, and I'm going to take those out in just a second. There's 2 more on the other side. Also, what you could do, you could always push the axle in just like this. It gives you more room. This way you don't damage the booth. As you can see, the axle, I'm just using my thumb to give you more room to get these out. So 2 bolts are already in my hand, as you can see. All I'm going to do right now, turn the steering wheel the other way around, and I'm just using my bare hands. It's a little harder. You could just go inside and turn the steering wheel using, or have somebody help you. But in my case, I'm just going to do it myself. I don't want to go inside. There's also 2 bolts on the back. This is the one that's on top. This one on top. This other one right here is on the bottom. And like I said, if you need more room, as you can see, axle moves back and forth. You could just use your thumb to push on it while you removing those bolts. Be careful, don't tear up axle boot, because if you don't have enough clearance, you could tear up axle boot right here, and then you have to replace axle. So just a good tip. You could push it out just like this. That gives you plenty of room to remove that bolt. So I'm going to take those out in a second. Okay, these are my other 2 bolts. So there's 4 bolts total to hold the bearing hub in place. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to straighten out the steering wheel again, and I'm just using my bare hands. It makes it a little harder. If I hop inside, it takes me a second. So now my bearing hub is ready to come out. It comes out just like this. The reason why I showed you my air chisel, the reason why, because this vehicle is a southern vehicle, so as you can see, there's minimum rust in here. Everything coming out nice and easy. On the vehicles that are from eastern side of country, like New York, Ohio, where they have used salt, these bearing hubs get really stuck. For example, I'm going to show you an example. I'll show you what I mean. Sometimes they're stuck so hard to the spindle that I end up using air chisel to break it free. Air chisel makes it very quickly and easily. You can always use a flat tip screwdriver. A flat tip screwdriver and a hammer. You can put it in and kind of pry it out. because I have seen these wheel bearings stuck so hard that it took me 30-40 minutes just to get it off the spindle. But in my case, this one is very clean. It came out very nice, but this wheel bearing making a humming noise. When I turn it, I could hear a little bit of a clunk, like click, 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 click inside the bearing. So that is the reason why we're replacing this wheel bearing. And when you install the wheel bearing, make sure you use OEM Honda wheel bearing. And this is the magnetic ring I was talking about right here. Basically, to put it back in, we just need to reverse the process. Make sure you put your brake rotor heat shield in the correct way. And these holes match up, and there's also splines on the axle, and there's splines inside your wheel bearing. So when you put it in, you might need to jiggle it back and forth. Once you lock onto the splines, you might need to turn the bearing back and forth to line up all those holes. There you go. You have 2 bolts in. The heat shield is locked up. It's not going anywhere. I'm gonna finger tighten my bolts. Also, very important, when you put all 4 bolts in, make sure you tighten each bolt a little bit at a time so it evenly pulls in the bearing. You don't want to tighten one bolt and then try to tighten another bolt all the way in. You don't want to do that. You want to do each bolt a little bit at a time till the bearing is firmly in there. So I'm going to reinstall all these 4 bolts. Same thing on this side. All I have to do right now is just use my impact, drive them in there, and then I'm going to put the axle nut back on and I'm going to lock it. Always recommended putting brand new axle nut if you don't have one. You could reuse it if you took it out and it's nice and clean like mine, because normally these get torn up in this area. So always use a new axle nut. I already impacted my 4 bolts that hold my bearing hub in place. Next, I'm going to replace axle nut, and you need size 36 for that. And don't forget, it's a very important step. You want to lock it back in place. That is the reason I have this pointer right here. It should look something like this when you're done. As you can see, it's not gonna go anywhere because it's locked. That's what it's made for. Next, I'm gonna install my brake rotor. And when you install it, make sure the hole for your Phillips size screw matches the brake rotor, because you could install it the wrong way, then you have to take it off. Okay, as you can see, it's got this little cavity. It's got this little cavity right here, and there's a little hole on your bearing hub. So make sure you line it up. Just like this. And reinstall your screw. Don't forget it. You don't have to get it nice and tight. And you can see my brake rotor is not moving anymore. And now it makes my life a lot easier to turn my steering wheel. I could just take my hands and grab the rotor and turn it outwards like this. Now I have to replace my brake caliper. You can see how nice it was. It didn't really put any stress on my brake hose, I'll have to take it off and put it back in the rotor and replace two size 19 bolts that are behind your caliper. There's one on the bottom. This is size 19, so I'll bring my camera over. Once you finger tighten these, there's also one on top. Alright, you're pretty much done. All you have to do now is replace the wheel and you're done. So make sure your heat shield is not rubbing against the rotor. So I usually straighten out the wheel, I bend the back with my hands, just like this. Because a lot of times it could be touching the rotor, it'll make a little squeaking noise. Don't forget to remove the bungee cord that you possibly have left on your strut. And now all I have to do is just install my wheel, and that's size 22. And I'm also going to show you one tip when you install the wheel. When you install the wheel, make sure when you put it on, make sure it's centered. And then, I know a lot of mechanics, they just take their impact and they just start driving these in, and that's not the right way to do it, because a lot of times they cross thread your studs, and then you have a problem. So what I normally do, I either finger tighten them first, or if it's uncomfortable using your fingers, I put my size 22 like this wheel nut, and you could just do it like that. Once you have them all on, trying to get it as tight as you can with your hand so the wheel is not moving. That's when I'm going to tighten them up using my impact. Just a lot of mechanics make this big mistake when they just put this on the gun like this, and all they do, they just drive them in. You know, and sometimes if it's just slightly cross-threaded, it screws up your stud. Since they have an impact, they could put it in, but when they taking it out again, it normally breaks the studs or screws up your lug nuts. So that's a very important step to make sure when you put them on, make sure they're all in there as tightly as they can. Also, hold the wheel and never go in the clockwise pattern. Always do a crisscross. That's it, and you're done. Once again, thanks for watching. This was George with Melnick's Automotive. This is how you replace a wheel bearing hub on a 2011 through 2017 Honda Odyssey.